Hi guys, welcome back to the next segment in our Blender workshop where we're gonna be doing lighting properly and we're gonna angle the camera properly and we're gonna set up our first render image finally. With lighting, I think the ground plane is a bit big, so yeah, it will benefit if our ground plane is a bit smaller. Let me turn on this as well. Yeah, I think half of it would be nice. Yeah, it looks better. Like this is before, where you can see like a separation between the ground and the background, like further away, compared to this. The reason for this is because our light is larger and is actually lighting up like the whole plane as such. So I think it looks a bit better. It actually doesn't really make sense for our pen to stand up like, in this straight position. It doesn't really look very realistic for the pen to stand like that. So um, uh, I'm gonna do something that is mostly applicable when you start doing animation, but in this case I think it helps to keep things a bit more organized, and that's gonna be parenting. So before that, I think I'm gonna hide this ground plane so everything is a bit easier to see. Right. Parenting. The idea of parenting is that you have an object that control the motion of all objects, or the children objects. So for this, we're gonna select, actually we're gonna add the parent. In this case, it's gonna be an empty object. So you shift A to add anything in Blender, and empty, add a plane axis. Scale it down a little bit, like so. And to parent, you always select everything, you always select the children first and then the parent last. In this case, it's like that. And you press Ctrl P for parenting. Select object, keep transform. Essentially, let me move this empty back into the pen design, and now we can actually change the name of the empty to pen, keep things a bit more organized. So as you can see, we select the pen and press G to move it around. The whole just select the empty, press G to move around, the whole pen is moving along with it. Yeah, which is nice. We can also rotate, and the whole pen is gonna rotate around the empty as well, and we can also scale it, the pen bigger and smaller. Yeah, pretty fun stuff. So this is gonna be very useful later when we start animating, but right now I want to to lay it down, to lay down the pen, you know. Yeah, so we're just gonna select the empty, and now we're gonna rotate, press auto rotate. You can actually hold down onto control to lock it to like 5-degree increments, like so, or you can just type like 90 to like rotate it like that. I think that makes more sense. Yeah, just type 90 to rotate. Go to the side view and also rotate it by 90 degree. And we can actually move it up, like just eyeball it until it's like above the ground plane. Something like that, I think. And maybe we can move it, nope, not delete, move it G, X to lock it to the X axis movement, to angle it around there, and I think it looks better already. Right. One thing that is not applicable to the pen renderer but applicable to like your design, if you have like straight edges, like how you should position the camera, I think is a useful trick. Let me just turn off this. You can just uncheck this checkbox here to temporarily disable whatever inside that collection. Very useful. Shift A, and I'm gonna demonstrate this trick by adding a cube. Maybe you can scale it down. Actually, I'll move it up GZ to move it up 1 meter, so it's like directly above the ground plane. And if you go up here and select 3D cursor instead of individual origin, as you can see here, if you scale it, it's actually moving, it's actually scaling with relation to the center of the cube. But if you select the 3D cursor, it's actually scaling with relation to our 3D cursor, the symbol you can see down there. Right, so everything is like above the ground. Just gonna move it maybe into like that. Say if you want to look downwards so that you can see the top of the box, I think intuitively you would just go to the side view. I mean, I did this as well for a very long time. Go to the side view. Let me change this back to individual origins. Yeah, go to the side view and then rotate the camera like so, and then just angle it until you see like the box like this. Maybe to exaggerate, move it a bit closer, right? The thing about this is that if you look at the side over here, if you really pay attention, I guess, you can see that the side wall is actually not parallel with the canvas. For a long time I thought this is fine, but I realized that for architectural visualization, or when your product has like straight edges, it's preferable, I guess, to have like these edges here to be parallel to the edge of the canvas. Yeah, I think to make it more obvious, I can actually go into this and check this box, right? Yeah, to constrain the view to just what we're seeing in the render. We can also over here press T to hide the toolbar here on the side and hide the gizmo and also extra information we don't need, right? So how do we make sure that the edges are actually parallel to the edge of the canvas? An easy simple trick is actually just to keep the camera to be at always 90 degree on the X rotation. We can angle it like around there, I suppose. On the camera material, or like the camera properties, you can actually tilt shift. It's a function called tilt shifting. So what happens is it's essentially taking like a straight on photo, but it's cropping the lower portion of the photo. So this is called tilt shifting. So you shift Y until you can see the top of the box, and if you pay attention to the edges of the box with relation to the edge of the canvas, it's actually parallel. So it's very nice, especially when you're doing like architectural visualization, or if your products have straight vertical edges like this. Yeah. So that's how you tilt shift your camera. But I guess for the pen, it's not really necessary to tilt shift, because our pen doesn't really have any straight edges going straight up like vertically. So I'm gonna set this back to 0, and we're just gonna manually tilt it down until we can see the face, I guess, the face of the pen, like so. A quick way to position your camera to anywhere that you want to look is actually you press N and go to view over here and check the box that says camera to view. You can pan around and orbit around until you and the camera is gonna move accordingly, as you can see here on the right. Yeah, until you find like a nice angle to render at. I think this is quite nice. Yeah, I think maybe like that, right? Okay, so yeah, I think it's fine. With lighting, I usually I only have 2 lights in my scene. I've seen lighting setup that are quite complicated, but for me, I find 2 lights very functional, especially when you're doing animation. Yeah, unless of course when you're lighting metal, you probably will need more lights in order to make sure that all parts can be seen. But for an object like this, I think 2 lights would be sufficient. So usually what I do is just to have 1 key light and 1 rim light for objects like this. So for the key light, I'm just gonna move it to the side, maybe like around there. With lighting, the larger the light, the softer the shadow. The smaller the light, the harsher the shadow is. It's just something that I remember and apply time to time. So I guess I can demonstrate. Here we have like a relatively large box. For example, you can see that the shadow cast is very soft, but if you shrink this, you can see that the shadow gets harsher as the light size gets smaller. So I think something around the default value should suffice, and we can definitely make it a bit brighter. 40 perhaps. Okay, I think it's a bit too bright. Maybe 20. I think 20 works, I think. 25 maybe. 25 works okay, I think. Yeah, I think it's also gonna be good for the camera and the pen to move forward a little bit. Yeah, so as you can see, the shadow gets a bit bigger if we move forward a little bit like that. I think that's better. Right. Can lower the light a little bit. So this is our key light. In order to produce another light of this very quickly, you Shift D to duplicate, and maybe we can position it around here and rotate it by 90 degree, and move it to the back a little bit. It's also quite a good practice to like temporarily turn off one light and see the effect of the rim light on the design. I think it shouldn't contribute too much to the lighting, like overall lighting environment. Just some detail that you want to highlight, like this edge over here. Yeah, it'll be nice to have it lit like that, I think. Yeah. So this is just like a very quick 2-point light setup. And sometimes 3 if you want to highlight certain features. Like if you have like a curve here that you want to highlight, you should have another light that points directly towards that curve. I think that's my lighting technique, is just to spam light where it's too dark. but well, just with some moderation, of course. I also think that this light is a bit too bluish. I think it will benefit in general for like a kiddie design to have like a bit of like a warmer tone. So I'm just gonna decrease this value to like maybe 5600. Yeah, something like that. To add to the realism, you can also add some texture to the ground plane actually, and for this I'm gonna select the ground plane and use the same material. It's actually looking quite nice. But I guess I'll just set it to white. Wait, for that of course you have to duplicate this and call this, say, ground. And actually yellow looks not bad. Maybe yellow should be the way. I guess I'll just decrease like the saturation a little bit, like there. It's looking okay, I guess. Also the noise texture is quite big, so for this we can increase to around 40. I think would be a nice value. Yeah. If you pay attention, you can also see that these white lines are quite distracting. So I would make some changes here. So before this goes into the hue and saturation, I'm actually gonna add like an RGB curve. This is useful for when you have like an image texture that you don't want to like edit in Photoshop, save it, and then export it again just to be used in Blender. You can actually just edit directly in here. I think a bit darker might decrease like the value of these grid lines. Yeah, I think that's better. I think that's better. So this is before. You can see the lines very obviously, and afterwards make this a bit darker, so I think it can increase the value a bit and make it a bit brighter here. Yeah, something like that, I think. One last thing that you can do to add to the realism is actually to add depth of field to the design. Let me turn on material shading. Over here, you want to turn off the screen so you can, yeah. For some reason, material preview doesn't see through the glass. So if you want to see the design itself, you need to turn off this eye icon here over like the glass parts in order to see what's underneath. Alright, depth of field. So a quick easy way to add depth of field is actually just to select the camera that you're looking through. In the camera setting down here, you click on this, check on this box that says depth of field, and use the eyedropper tool and select the part that you want to focus on. In this case, I think it should be the screen, but this doesn't always work, as you can see. Right, so one way that I find is more useful and also fix the problem is to have an empty to drive this depth of field, like an empty that we used for the pen. We also add another one to drive the depth of field of the camera. So for this, we're gonna Shift A to add an empty, another plane axis. Let's get it down a little bit, maybe a bit smaller than the pen itself, so add some differentiation. It's easier to manage the empties later because it gets very messy, especially when you start animating. So you roughly move the empty to where you are going to focus on. In this case, it's gonna be the face of the character, like that. And we also should rename this to depth of field. It's easier to manage later. Set up the camera, and instead of focus object on the screen, we're gonna choose the depth of field. Yeah. So instantly, you'll see some background blur, which makes it looks a bit more, I guess, realistic. Yeah, like how a real camera should be looking through. Yep. And I guess we can just render this like directly and it's gonna look like this, and I think it looks quite okay. Yeah, I think zoom in just a little bit more. Yeah, okay. So that is lighting and I guess some camera work. The next thing we're gonna be covering in the next segments is gonna be some compositing tips and tricks in order to make it like even nicer. And after that, we're gonna go through some basic animation, and that should be it. See you guys in the next one.